Hello everyone, this is the great Lord and Master Osiron, the Eternal, for what is going to be another follow-up episode in the Osiron Tarot Spiral series, and this is going to expound on the true planetary order sequence, because on the last video, even though that video, in my view, was an amazing video, it seems that by the number of likes it got, which wasn't very many, in comparison to other videos I made, either people didn't believe it or it shattered their paradigm in some way. But the video really didn't do as well as I was hoping it would do. But I'm going to fix that today. I'm going to show you that this is indeed the true planetary sequence, and it confirms itself so perfectly and so beautifully as to leave it completely irrefutable. So if I do my job properly, it will be absolutely irrefutable, because this thing is like it's like all the other structures that use the single digit code. When you dial it in and get it right, it reveals itself as perfect, and this is no exception. So let's get started. Alright, this is called the Planetary Decan Deception. And again, we see the full zodiac wheel with the proper planetary sequence that begins with Saturn on the axis of the Great Lord, and it loops around and it ends with Saturn again. And it's using the houses of Saturn as its demarc point. Because the postulation is that the planetary sequence for the decans that is popular in occult circles and used in the tarot is wrong. And that sequence begins in its traditional presentation. It begins in Aries with Mars, and it loops around, and it ends in Pisces with Mars again. Well, that is false. And some of the examples I gave in the previous video were only a couple, because at that time it was still new. Like, one of them was that the Sun makes its first appearance in Aries, and the Sun is born in Aries. Another is Jupiter takes the cardinal position here, and the 9 at the bottom of the Osiron Tarot Spiral combined with the 4 forms 13, which reduces to a 4. And then Venus shows up on the scene in how she rules, and then the Moon down here shows up in with a High Priestess reigns in her rightful house of Capricorn. Well, when you do that, when you lay that out in the proper sequence, what you'll notice if you look at it long enough is that every house has a specific combination of planets. Example being, it begins in Aquarius, and Aquarius starts out with Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. Well, every single house shares that planetary sequence with one other house, except for the 2 houses on top of the axis of the Great Lord, and that is Cancer and Leo. These 2 houses have a unique and distinct planetary sequence all their own, and they do not share with any other house. All the rest of the houses share with one other house. And I have it written out over here what those are. And I began where it began. So what that means is this isn't just thrown up there without any rhyme or reason. This is using the basic order of operations to get this. So I start in Aquarius, where it begins on the axis of the Great Lord. And the planetary sequence for Aquarius is also shared with Virgo, and that is Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. And the next one is Pisces and Libra. They share a set. Scorpio and Aries and Scorpio share their set. Taurus and Sagittarius share their set. And this house in Capricorn share their set. So that's 5 houses that share their set. And that gives you a planetary sequence here that begins with Saturn. It also ends with Saturn in that sequence, and in the dead center of it is Saturn. So Saturn starts it, Saturn ends it, and in the very dead center is Saturn. And out of all these houses, which is a total of 10 houses, and if you recall, Saturn is associated with 10. As a matter of fact, on the Osiron tarot spiral, the houses of Capricorn and Aquarius, if you add up all the tarot cards that go there, they reduce to 10. Well, they reduce to 1, but they reduce to 1 via 10. So Saturn is ruled by 10. Saturn is associated with 10 in a lot of ways. This is one of them. And this is another one, because 10 houses belong to Saturn. And I just mentioned that these two houses don't share their planetary sequence with any other one. Well, they're also guarded by Saturn, because Saturn begins it down here in these two houses. Saturn has 2 more spots here, but Saturn never enters this area. These 2 houses are the height of summer. You have Cancer and Leo, and these are the height of summer. Saturn never enters that, but Saturn is standing guard right outside of them. So Saturn is the last decan here, and Saturn is the first decan here, standing guard over this place, and Saturn never enters it. These 3 planets begin with Jupiter, Mars, and Venus, and then Mercury, Moon, and the Sun. And interestingly enough, these planets, this one begins with one of the 2 planets that have a pure masculine presentation. And this does that. So Jupiter is one of the 2 planets that has a pure masculine presentation, and then it begins with Mars and Venus, and those are linked. You know, Mars and Venus, war and love. And then Mercury is the other planet that has a masculine presentation, and that begins the house of Leo. And then the other 2 planets that go there are the Moon and the Sun, which is the archetypal feminine and the archetypal masculine. Okay? So we're seeing powerful links with that. Now, what else happens when you do that? If you take the shared houses and you combine the ruling planets for each of those houses, example being Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, and Virgo is ruled by Mercury, Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, and Libra is ruled by Venus. Now Mars, Aries and Scorpio are both ruled by Mars, and this is in the dead center of this construct is Mars and Mars. And now what we see in the last 2 is the exact mirror image of the previous 2. So Taurus and Sagittarius is now Venus and Jupiter, and before that it was Jupiter and Venus. And the last 2 are Mercury and Saturn, which is the exact reverse of what began it with Saturn and Mercury. So this forms a pattern that is 100% symmetrical within itself. So you know what I mean? So it's completely, perfectly symmetrical and mirrored in what it presents. But that's not all. What it also does is reveals the order, the planetary sequence order when you do that too. So it starts out with Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and Mercury, and that's going down. And then the next pillar is going up with Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and Mercury. And that is how the planets go on the axis of the Great Lord. It starts out with Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and Mercury, and then the Sun and the Moon are separate on top and unique on top. So this is producing the planetary sequence going down and up. It's showing perfect symmetry in the construction of the planets. And it also shows the precessional vortex too. Because if you recall on the axis of the Great Lord, how it shows up with the Staff of Hermes, in the Spear of Destiny, I highlight this. It shows the precessional order, and it begins with the tarot court cards. It goes Queen, King, Prince, Queen, King, Prince, Queen, King, Prince, Queen, King, Prince. That forms a precessional counterclockwise vortex. And this is doing the same exact thing with the planetary sequence. It's showing its precessional vortex. So now, what you'll see here, you may notice, I know there's a lot going on here, and it might be hard to make sense of it, but you'll see, every now and then, you'll see 666 show up. 666, and I'll tell you why that is. In the realm of Saturn, which in the 5 houses, or the 10 houses that Saturn has a direct presence in, or a direct presence in, the number of planets come to 15. So it takes 15 planets to get this sequence, okay? And 15 is the card of the devil, which is associated with, Satan, Saturn, Satan, and the devil. But we're seeing this here. So we're seeing 15 things, but that's 2. 15 times 2, because there's 2 of them, because it goes it goes through twice. And then in Cancer and Leo, there is 6 planetary characters that form up their planetary associations. So that gives you, the first 15 gives you a 6, the second 15 gives you a 6, and then Cancer and Leo give you a 6 directly, 4, 6, 6, and 6. And if you recall, if you used a proper number sequence for the tarot in each of the houses, each of the numbers reduced to 6. So 1, 2, 3 reduces to 6, 4, 5, 6 reduces to 6, and 7, 8, 9 reduces to 6. And that gives you a 6, 6, and 6 for each quadrant, which reduces to 18, and then 9, of course. So we're seeing another way that 666 comes into the picture, like that. And it's just absolutely stunning. And you might also notice, I circled on this zodiac wheel here, I circled every time, I circled every place where Saturn appears, okay? So we started off in the beginning with 2 Saturns, and then Saturn shows up again in the cherubic decan positions of Mars and Scorpio. Saturn shows up, and then it ends in this house in the last position, and it shows up in Virgo in the first position, standing guard of the summer, as I said. But if you look at that, you may notice this looks an awful lot like an inverted pentagram, sort of skewed to the side a little bit. See, there's the top, there's the other ones, and then these 2 down here, it's as if they form a single point, and it looks like a pentagram, an inverted pentagram that's tilted on its side a little bit. So we're seeing some more of the so-called satanic mythology showing up in this construct here. And yeah, so that's amazing. Now, one other thing I want to point out too. This is pretty amazing. This is going to link it to the tarot in an amazing way. If you add up all of the cards, all of the houses in the realm of Saturn, which is 10 houses, the 10 houses of Saturn are these houses. If you add up all the house numbers for all those houses, it comes to 69, okay? And again, we see in Cancer that looks like a 69. But so it comes to 69. Now the houses of the summer, which is Cancer and Leo, is the 4th and the 5th house, and that adds to 9 directly. And if you also recall, 4 and 5, now that's pretty interesting that these would be isolated as 4 and 5, because 4 and 5, there's a lot going on with that. 4 is the elements, and 5 is the pentagram, which is the elements with divine spirit joined together. But it's also the heart, the center point of the Yggdrasil. If you watch those videos of the Yggdrasil, the center point of the 2D structure is occupied by the 4 and the 5. And we're seeing this here, 4 and 5, is showing up again in a powerful way. But if you add that 69, if you add this 9 to this 69, it gives you 78. And that is the number of tarot cards in a tarot deck. The 78 cards of the tarot. So if you add up every house 1 through 12, that adds to 78. So we're seeing another powerful link with the tarot and the zodiac. But But now, I just want to add this too, because this is important. Because, again, when you see the 15 characters of the realms of Saturn, 15 of course reduces to 6, okay? But if you add these 6 characters to that, 15 plus 6 is 21, and again, the tarot, the actual tarot trumps besides the Fool is 21, okay? So we're seeing a 21 link with it too, which reduces to 3. So this 15 reduces to 6, and then the total of them all is 21, which reduces to 3. So again, we're seeing powerful numbers. Oh, and now one more thing too. I know I'm a little bit, scattered today, but it is the day after Thanksgiving, so. This 6 that is derived from the houses of Cancer and Leo, each of the houses has 3 planets, so that's 3 and 3, or 33 to give you the 6. So we're seeing another link to 33 too. And the reason I point this out is because on the True Tree of Life, if you recall, when you add the tarot keys, the Pillar of Yakin adds to 33 when you use the tarot cards, but the Pillar of Boaz adds to 39 before it reduces to a 3. Okay? And then if you take the houses, if you take all of the houses that Saturn actually resides in, which is only 6, if you add up all those house numbers, it adds to a total of 39. Well, the tarot trumps on the Pillar of Boaz add to 39 directly before it reduces to 12, then 3, to give the 369 presentation of the tarot trumps on the video I Own the Tree of Life, which is a powerful video. That's one of the videos that started all this in the beginning. So we're seeing the link here with the True Tree of Life and the Zodiac and the Tarot. See, all these linked together. Because if you recall from Osiron Tarot Spiral 3, Message of the Blood, the machinations of the code that the Tarot trumps reveal the True Tree of Life. And then, as I pointed out in the last video, the rest of the planets, which are 6 in total besides Saturn, show up 5 times on the wheel. Well, 6 times 5 is 30, but that 30 reduces to a 3, which gives you another 6-3 presentation. So we're seeing how this aspect of the planetary sequence also meshes with a single-digit code and is showing you how that is. So this is a lot. This is huge. This is showing that this is the proper planetary sequence, and it confirms it so beautifully and powerfully as to be virtually irrefutable, because it's like a machine. It's like a gear. Once you dial it in and hit it right, it just comes alive perfectly, and it shows it. I mean, this is showing you so much in this construct up here, showing you the planetary sequence going down, then up in the processional vortex. It's got perfect symmetry. It's showing everything. I mean, the other way just does not do that. I mean, the other way is just off, because it doesn't form perfect symmetry, because it's off by 2 houses, because it begins in Aries and it's supposed to begin on the axis of the Great Lord, and it throws everything off when you do that. It doesn't work like that. I mean, it still forms a structure like this, because it still does the same thing with Mars. Like Mars will be here, Mars, and then Mars will be on the outside of the 2 planets that are, houses that are isolated there, which is Virgo and Libra. But it's just so fucking cockeyed and wrong. It's just ridiculous. And it's also showing too is that this is another example of occult bullshit. This is showing that the so-called occulted information that's being presented to the masses is fucking wrong. And this is another clear-cut example of that. So the True Tree of Life is fucking wrong and bullshit. The Planetary Decan sequence is obviously wrong and bullshit. The Tarot Cube is wrong and bullshit. All of it is. And this is blowing the doors off of that myth too. And over here what I got is just, if you recall from part 6 of this, I gave an alternate version of the Tarot Trump planetary aspects. That's before I figured out this. And what that does, and here's how this works. Because here's the sequence. The aces are 0, and then the planetary representations go along with the days of the week, and then 8 is Earth, and 9 is like the cosmos card, you know, for everything. It's sort of like the 0 unmasked. And this is how that works out on the zodiac. You know, 1, 2, 3 goes here, and the planet assignment goes along with it. But you sort of use that as a secondary aspect. So, as a matter of fact, you don't even really need to put these, because these are sort of implied by the number that goes with it, with the tarot. So when you use a proper number code, which is not going to be the same as the traditional tarot, you just take the number and you recognize that in the case of 5, like 5 will always be Venus. So when you draw the 5 of whatever, you'll know that Venus plays a part in that role somewhere. In the case of the 5 in Scorpio, or the 5 of Cups, Venus would show up, but Saturn also shows up in the 5 of Cups too. And speaking of that, there's one thing I want to highlight, because the tarot, the Osiron Tarot Spiral isn't just about numbers. The pictorial significance of the cards plays a very, very important role in this. So, and it meshes perfectly. As I started to allude to in the very beginning in the Osiron Tarot Spiral proto version, I got to this, but I discovered so much more after that, and I want to get to one of those points. It's that the tarot cards that go in Scorpio are the Hanged Man and Death. Okay? And then in the following house is Temperance and the Devil in its true home in Sagittarius. Well, if we look at the as the life of a man, okay, and the conception happens in Capricorn, okay, so the baby is in utero here, in the womb here, but this baby is born in Aries as a new life, is born from the womb in Aries, and then he lives and goes through his life, okay. Well, he doesn't actually die in Sagittarius. He dies in Scorpio with the Death card, because so the Hanged Man is basically a sign of the life coming to an end, immersing back in the primordial waters of 0. But the very last card that goes there is A213, Death. So in this case, this is a literal death. So the death of the being happens at the end of Scorpio. And what happens in Sagittarius is what happens between the death of one life and the birth of the next in Capricorn, or the conception in Capricorn again. So we see that with Temperance. Temperance is usually shown with an angelic being mixing the elements together, you know, 2 cups mixing together. Well, that is the life that was here mixing back into the primordial essence of 0. And then the Devil 15 is the sexual process that of the devil, in his actions stimulate the next incarnation or conception process that starts with the Tower in Capricorn, and then the star is symbolic of the fetus that has been conceived in the womb. Okay, and then the next 2 cards here are the moon and the sun, and that's sort of like symbolic of the gender being displayed, of feminine and masculine. And then the cards that go here are judgment, and then the world, and then it's born again. So the tarot cards, the tarot trump's pictorial significance perfectly meshes too with this. So the house of Sagittarius is sort of like the conduit to 0, and this is also house 9, and 9 is 0 unmasked. So this is the roadway that sort of begins and ends from the Fool in the middle. So the Fool is 0, and it starts in the middle. And so this is actually the alleyway of between the physical world and the non-physical world with Sagittarius. So so in this case, it's acting as 0, and in the action that happens here with the devil ejaculating into here with the Tower stimulates new life again, and it conceives, and then the womb period, and then it's born again, and it goes around, and it dies in Scorpio, with the last card being death. So that's, the life actually ends in house 8 with the last card being death. So the pictorial significance meshes perfectly with the Osiron Tarot Spiral. So it's not just numbers, it's pictorial significance and number code. So but again, there's so much going on. Again, when you add up all the houses, it comes to 78. So this is also proof positive that the tarot is a pictorial map of the zodiac in every way, because this is, the Osiron Tarot Spiral system is a complete tarot system. It uses all the cards, it uses all of the trumps, all of the court cards, and all of the pips. And it forms this. I mean, this is, you know, the planetary sequence makes everything come alive. I hope I got everything in this. I know there's a lot to cover. I know this is a lot going on in here, but this should, this should prove my claim beyond a shadow of any reasonable doubt that this is the true planetary sequence of the planets, and it uses the axis of the Great Lord as its planetary template. So when you do that, it meshes and works together like a gear. It's perfect. So thank you, and namaste.